It does feel like there is a move afoot, not just here in New York, but across the country, and especially in Democratic states, to raise taxes. The question, of course, is do you have any anxiety or worry that this is going to drive out business, that this is going to drive out tax revenue?
Well, we always are concerned with finding the right balance. But here in New York, at least, all of the revenue that will be generated from those listed in New York will go towards funding the MTA and the subway system, which everybody knows is in desperate need of help. And so we know we need upwards of $40 to $60 billion for the MTA capital needs, and we have to find that money somewhere. We're trying to do it in the most fair way possible. Interestingly enough,
the most fair way possible to raise rates on people who are actually using the subway?
Well,
the train system?
And there is a fare increase that just went into effect too, but we're trying to find the money where people will feel it the least as well. Interestingly enough, the budget that we just passed, the revenue increases, had great input from the business community in New York, and this seemed to be their preferred method of raising
because
revenue.
they'd rather you do that than tax them directly, I'm sure.
Well, there were other alternatives that they found less appealing.
But it is not, if you ask New York City, the majority of people in New York City are not in favor of it.
In favor of what?
Or not in favor of the congestion pricing. It's a majority that are not.
Right, but the business community, the New York City Partnership, we're big advocates of this for a long time because it is seen as a way not just to raise the revenue we need to make mass transit actually function, but you're right here in Times Square, you look out your window, well, there's no cars on this street, but if there were, you would see how difficult it is to drive around the city right now.
There's still a lot of details that aren't clear, and I mean, I come in from New Jersey. From what I hear, it's going to be people who are coming in from the Holland or the Lincoln Tunnel that get a rebate back, but people coming in from the George Washington Bridge would not.
That's yet to be determined.
Yeah.
There's a committee that's been set up that will suss out the details and figure out what is the fairest way to establish exemptions.
It strikes me that would create some other problems. You would just have a lot of people who would be avoiding the GW Bridge, going down to the Lincoln Tunnel and creating a real mess there.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to avoid, is implement this the fairest way possible, both to reduce congestion and to raise the money we need to actually. The key here is there are many more people who get on the subways every single day to get to work than are driving in their cars. Never mind the fact that it's better for the environment to have people on mass transit than in vehicles and the congestion problem. There's a lot of reasons to do it this way. Everywhere it's been done, it started out less popular, ended up quite popular.
Where's that, London and?
London and Stockholm, and there's one other city I'm forgetting, but the congestion actually has been reduced dramatically in those cities, and they've raised revenue to actually help fund
Singapore was the other one.
Yes.
that raised it. Now, but the problem is, you're right, the subway needs money, but for those who can choose where to live, many of them are choosing Florida, and the governor had an interesting op-ed this week where he said, look, the problem is Florida is a state that receives more from the federal government than it pays. New York puts in $36 billion more every year. How do you compete with Florida? You're right, we need money in the state for certain things, but there are people who have a choice and they are moving to Florida.
And this is the policymaker's dilemma constantly, is how do you raise the revenue you need to keep a city this big and this vibrant functioning the way it needs to function and deal with competition from other places. I dare say, no disrespect to Florida, my parents have a condo there, but most people, all things being equal, would rather be in New York. There's a value added to being in New York, and the question is how much can you really stress that by
Are we close to that tipping point?
I don't think so. I mean, New York's economy.
You think we could tax them more in New York?
Look, New York's economy has been doing very, very well over the last decade. As long as that continues to happen, there is a breaking point. We all recognize that.
It'd be great to attract like a really big business here that would pay like $25 billion in taxes and then use some of that.
I thought you wanted them in New Jersey. What happened?
No, but there's an idea. You would have had $25 billion out of the 40.
Right. Well, good for us that Google's doing just that right here in Manhattan, so we'll be able to generate that revenue.
Is there a good chance that the revenue will be less than you expect? Because I'm already hearing that the New Jersey governor wants his piece of this too. They're saying they want some of that money to be going towards New Jersey Transit and the PATH system.
Well, I don't think they get to decide what New York does with its revenue.
It sounds like there's going to be a little bit of a battle because it's New Jersey residents who are paying a lot of this.
There will be a conversation, certainly, I imagine, between the executives of the two states to figure that out.
Let me ask you a philosophical question.
Yeah.
And it goes to the breaking point issue, which is, what do you think the upper limit is on total between federal and state taxes that the quote-unquote wealthy can absorb, accept, and be willing to pay before they move to Florida?
You asked me like a particular percentage?
Yeah, no, because I think but I think that there is a breaking point. I don't know if that number. I mean, I think right now, on the high end, it's probably 53 to 55%.
Right. On the low end, people are kind of trapped. You don't get the option of saying I'm going to really pay.
But the question is, on the high end, where you think that breaking point is 60%, 60% the number? AOC with her conversation about 70%? I mean, because I think people
Her
are trying to
mother moved to Florida,
understand
by the way, too.
what that ultimately looks like in terms of where not just the Democratic Party, but where the political conversation is going on taxes on the wealthy.
But you can't just pick a certain percentage. That's not the only variable involved, right? So there's a value in being in New York. There is an ability
Right.
to generate
Okay.
more wealth.
And
in
it's
being
not a
in New York.
quantum. It doesn't. People stay and then it hits a number, they all leave. It's some leave at the lower number,
right.
more leave at the next number, more leave at the next number.
And it's
just
a constant evaluation,
wish-
and you see year to year.
But I don't
what the
think
rates are and what they're
politicians
moving
think
at.
about, you think you're going to raise more revenue, and I'd like to look at it 2 or 3 years later where you see, oh my God, we actually ended up with less.
We do that, Joe. We look at it not just 2 or 3 years later. We look at it year to
Because
year.
it does happen. I mean, look at Illinois. I mean, the more you raise marginal rates, the more people leave, and then the
Right.
pie actually shrinks.
And nobody wants that, and we all understand that. But there's a point where, and I don't think we've reached it yet, where you could. And look, if I give you the opposite point of view, which is we need revenue. You can't have a city operating and functioning without mass transit that works.
You already think of New York as
people can't-
one of the highest places
No,
to.
I hear that, but if you can't get to work on time because the subway doesn't work,
underinvested in for
then-
years,
right? The infrastructure in the city needs help, and we need money. And where are you going to find that money?